Hello, welcome. This is the first episode of Amusia. I'm trying to come up with a tagline for it. Best I've come up with is podcast for music nerds.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no pun in it.
No, there's no pun.
I'd expect a pun.
Maybe next episode we'll have a pun.
Okay.
I don't really know who else it's aimed at, to be honest. Because it's not just like classical music or games. It's just anything music related at all. So... Right, anyway, I'm Tom. This is Blake. Say hello, Blake.
Hello.
Right, why don't you tell us who you are?
So I'm Blake, aka Protodome online, and I have just finished, I've just passed my Viva for my PhD in embedded composition.
Yes, and in fact... Here's a congratulations card.
Really? Thank you.
As Blake is now a doctor, as of 2 days ago?
Yeah. Well, doctor pending minor revisions. I'm trying to get this away from the friends. Thank you very much for this. Nice. A congrats owl.
Yeah. It has a limerick in it, but you already know the limerick.
Shall I read it out?
Well, it's kind of relevant to what the first podcast is going to be about. So... why don't you read it, and then we'll actually talk about what the topic is.
Okay, Dr. Troise. There once was a man called Blake Troise, whose doctorate was in making noise. He tried to write hits with minimal bits, but ultimately it just annoys.
Okay, the last bit was like a value judgment that hopefully you don't agree with.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
No, thank you very much for that.
All right, so you're going to be explaining to me what your PhD is about, because I still don't really know.
Yeah, so there's two parts to my PhD. So the first part is... generally one-bit music, and the other part is composing in minimal spaces or for low memory environments. So I think I should probably start with one-bit music because it might make more sense, and then move on to just music coding and music routines and things. Okay,
so do you want to tell us about what you do as a musician and see how this is relevant?
Yeah, so...
for anyone who doesn't know what Protodome is or who that is.
Yeah, so my artist Protodome, I write music for... I write chiptune music, and chiptune is a kind of nebulous subject or genre, and many people would argue it's not a genre, it's a set of instrumental forces. But essentially what chiptune is it's writing music for legacy platforms or chips or programmable sound generators. And I can delve in a little more.
Yeah, I don't know what any of that means, to be honest.
Okay, well...
I think people who are watching this and not just listening to it will see what a budget job we've done here. So this will let you know how not technical I am. For example, I didn't have enough XLR leads, so we've had to plug this mic into...
You don't need an XLR lead, do you? You can just plug it directly into the...
But I feel like we do, because we've got this here.
Well, it works, doesn't it? It's just extra paraphernalia.
It's really budget looking. Also, my camera stand broke this morning, so it's propped up on like 7 books. Yeah. We got a camera just hanging off of the curtain.
Yeah.
And that.
GoPro on charge.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully it's going to turn out all right.
Yeah.
The point is, I don't really know much tech stuff. So...
okay. I didn't want to get into chip music today because it's, again, quite a big subject.
Okay.
But in short, it's music. So, for example, you know how the Game Boy sounds? Those bleeps and bloops, the square waves?
Yes.
Well, it has a chip or it has a set of functions. I can't quite remember if the Game Boy's sound generation functions...
Oh, technical problem. Okay. One technical problem later.
Yeah.
What were you just saying?
Okay, so it's a rough definition of chiptune. So you know the Game Boy. And
yes.
The way the Game Boy sounds. So it either has a set of functions that generate sounds, or it has a dedicated chip. I can't remember for the Game Boy. Game Boy nerds will know. But essentially what's happening is the processor itself isn't fast enough to generate a continuous stream of audio. So it delegates the audio generation to essentially a synthesizer, an onboard synthesizer, which it can. I'm just trying to think the best way of describing this. So essentially, it's like you have a musician, and you give that musician score, but the musician knows how to play their instrument, and the computer is just giving it the score.
Okay.
And that's kind of how chiptune works. It's not recordings; it's live performances of electronic equipment.
Is there a kind of a snobbery in chiptune amongst like what is authentically chip?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's not just the sound palette; it's also how the sound palette is achieved.
Yes,
is that right?
Yes, but I would say that now we're way more encompassing in the chiptune scene. It's not just that kind of hardware fetishistic kind of approach. It's more about the sounds, and it can get super broad now.
Because you've written music which is like authentic chip, and then just any sort of sound you want, right?
Yeah. And I think sometimes just stuff that sounds like video games, because chiptune isn't necessarily about video games, but often I think
just the sound palettes they would have been stuck with.
Yeah.
And what sort of creative choices they need to overcome the limitations.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people grew up with chiptune and video games.
Do you want to show us an example of your own chip music?
Yeah, I can show you an example. Are we gonna? Do I have to find it now, or should we cut it later? Okay.
No. Yes, you'll find it now.
Okay. Do you want to hear NES music or something else?
Whatever you consider to be the most authentic example of your chip.
Okay, well, I was going to play some 1-bit music later, but we'll get onto that.
Okay, we'll get onto that. Just for someone who has no idea what we're talking about right now.
It turns out that on my website, I don't have a link to it. I just have a download. So I'm not going to download like 100 meg. Here we go. So why don't we do this one?
So what music was that?
That was Banana Bossa from the album Famine Food.
And what did you just do? Did you just spill coffee all over yourself?
I did just spill coffee all down my leg.
Yeah, I think it just fell off your head. It's all right now. I think there was a seed on your head. There are seeds everywhere.
It's that little tray down there.
Because as I was saying about the budget nature of this inaugural episode, this table usually just houses a bird cage, and I've wheeled it in. And there are seeds all over the place.
So it seems like a waste. The bird's just sat there right in the center of the table.
Yeah, this folds in. All right, we don't have it all out. It just sits on this middle bit. Anyway.
Yeah.
So moving on. So that was from your album Family Food.
Yes, it was. So that was done entirely on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you hear the kind of characteristic sounds where it's square waves and triangle waves and noise, and I'm saying that hesitantly because that's not true of all chip music.
Okay.
And you know, like the Genesis or the Master System sounds very different, but that just tended to be the case because it's very easy to generate those sounds.
Yeah, because the square waves and triangle waves are some of the simplest sounds that can be produced, aren't they? Like after a sine wave.
Yeah. I mean, sine waves are quite hard to make.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, electronically.
Okay.
You think all you have to do with a square wave is have something that flips a voltage from high to low, and then consequently you have the amplitude flip from high to low, and then you have a waveform. Whereas a sine wave, you have to alter that continuously over time, and that's much harder.
Even though it's just the simplest sound
possible.
Is that fair to say? Because it has no overtones.
When you say simplest, it's the most common sound in nature.
A sine wave?
Yeah.
Is it? I didn't think there were any common sine waves.
No. Okay. So I know. What I mean is that the harmonic components. It all tends to be.
Should we explain what we mean by this?
Yeah. Though I feel like this is a completely different subject.
Yeah, but when you're listening to someone talk about something they know, and you might not know what they're talking about.
Okay. Well, I mean,
it's called the curse of knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah,
You get
sure.
loads of podcasts with people talking about their field of interest, and they just skip over stuff they assume other people are going to know.
Yeah.
So let's just quickly explain
Well, I
what you
think
mean by these sounds.
you can briefly explain
Okay.
the harmonic series.
Okay. Well, all sound is a combination of frequencies, isn't it?
Yeah.
So an instrument's timbre is defined by which overtones appear and their volume in relation to the fundamental note.
Yeah.
There are other things like attack, which is a sort of there is like a non-musical sound when you produce a note. Like say on a guitar, you pluck a string, there is just a noise, like a sort of a non-musical tone, and
Yeah.
that is also part of what helps us define timbre. But it's mostly the overtones, and there's also flux as well, which is like the change over time,
Okay.
basically.
Sure.
But the main component is the overtones.
Yeah.
And a sine wave has no overtones. That's why I was saying it's probably the most simple sound, like in that way.
Yeah. Though I'm
But
thinking
you seem
it-
to be having some problem with this.
Yeah, well, it's because I'm thinking of it in terms of generating that sound computationally. It's more difficult.
No one else thinks like that.
Yeah, no, it's for me. So for digital music, you'll hear the most common sounds, especially for subtractive synthesizers or hardware modular synthesizers. It will be the saw wave, because the saw wave is very easy to generate electronically as
That's
well.
all overtones.
It is. It's all
That's why it
equal
sounds
power.
so kind of messy, almost like really busy.
Yeah.
And the overtones are pretty loud in relation to the fundamental.
See, I want to say they're all equal power.
They're all equal.
I could be wrong. I mean,
thought-
I'm really happy to
I'm
be
pretty
wrong on
sure
this.
I read that they diminish slightly,
Okay.
but in a square wave and triangle wave, they're less loud, the overtones.
Yeah.
And because the overtones in a triangle wave, they're the same ones as a square wave, but they're like a third the volume of the ones in a square wave.
I didn't know that. So
Actually, I have written this down in a notebook that's like right behind you.
okay.
We could,
Do you want me to fish it out?
yeah. See, right on the bottom shelf there, there's a stack of notebooks.
Yeah.
There's a little one. Might be on top. There you go.
There you go.
Oh. Right, I just happen to have written this down. Hopefully the source I read this from is correct. Otherwise I'm just spreading more rubbish around. Yeah. So, you see that?
I did say that they are all odd harmonics,
Yeah.
right?
They're all odd harmonics in a square and triangle wave. This is what the amplitude of the partials is the same as in a sawtooth. The third has 1/3 amplitude, etc. That's a square wave, but it's just fewer partials,
Yeah.
fewer overtones. And then triangle waves, the amplitude of a given harmonic in a triangle wave is equal to the inverse square of its harmonic number. For example, a triangle wave with a fundamental frequency of 100 Hz and an amplitude of 1 would have a harmonic at 300 Hz with an amplitude of 0.1111. I'm not
Okay.
too sure what I meant by that.
Yeah.
So I wrote this out and I can't remember what that means.
No, that's really interesting. I didn't know that
Okay.
because I know that a triangle wave is essentially approximating a sine wave.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why else you'd.
Yeah,
have
they're just
one.
so quiet. It almost sounds like
Yeah.
it's between a square wave and a sine wave.
Yeah, it is.
Essentially.
It is timbrally as well. I mean, when you listen to it.
Yeah, and you can see why that is by the overtones.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, so how does this relate to what we were talking about? So, like a Game Boy uses a sine wave, or what do they use?
so Game
Can they
Boys.
use anything really?
So Game Boys are an interesting one because Game Boys have four channels. I'm trying to remember now. NES has a couple. So the Game Boy has 2 pulse wave channels, and now pulse waves are distinct from square waves. A square wave is a pulse wave. We'll get back to that. They also have a pseudo-random noise generator, so they can create bursts of percussive noise. It's not true randomness because it's a computer, and also I think basically it's random up to a certain point, and then it repeats. And humans are really good at noticing repetitions in sounds. And if you shorten that random duration, you get these metallic tones. You've almost definitely heard them if you've heard like Game Boy music. And the final thing the Game Boy has, which is really nice, is they never really used it in games. So people will say, yeah, they totally used it, but like in Nintendo games and stuff, they didn't really use it. It's just a WAV player. You can play WAV files, like PCM audio data.
Really?
Yeah.
But they just didn't.
Because it requires a lot of memory. to store actually those sounds. But
yeah, the memory on a Game Boy cartridge must be like tiny, because the biggest N64 was 32 megabytes. I think, wasn't it?
I think it's in the kilobytes, like hundreds of kilobytes, maybe.
So it would just, you could have like a recording of a tune for 10 seconds and no game or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, somewhere on here, and I can't remember exactly. I've got a comparison of the different sizes of audio formats, and you think 1 minute of or 1 second of WAV file recording is something like, I don't know, it's a couple of hundred kilobytes. Same with MP3.
Okay, so that's just, they could, but they just wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there's Game Boy software out there at the moment, so stuff like LSDJ, Little Sound DJ for the Game Boy, which makes use of the WAV channel to really like musical effect. So it can do stuff like manipulate. Do you know wavetable synthesis or wavetable synthesizers?
Nope.
Okay, well, basically, if you have a wave cycle, which is a portion of a waveform, I feel like there's so much to explain here.
Okay.
If you have a wave cycle, you can change that wave cycle over time and slowly mutate it into another one. It can do that because it can basically just play back from a table, and then you can manipulate that table in real time.
Okay. This is going to tie into music somehow, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Let's actually, like, should we talk more about the music that can be done with this? Because you're more of a jazz musician, aren't you?
So,
like, are there genre, I don't think that's a word. Are there limitations of what styles of music you can do with these technological limitations?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say no.
Really?
Yeah, I would say you could, in the same way that are there limits to any instrument in the genres that they can tackle? Probably not. They're associated with certain genres for sure.
Okay. But surely there's a limitation on polyphony.
Yeah.
Or you've got tricks to get around this, haven't you?
So again, this
is your whole shtick, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is 1-bit music. This isn't Game Boy music. Game Boy music is very different.
Bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that to me sounds like you've got a bit. Like, I don't know really what that means.
So do you know what a bit is?
Tell me and I'll tell you if I know it.
Okay. So a bit is a single binary unit of information. So
okay, that's what I thought, but that sounds like you can only have one thing happening.
Yes, well, kind of. So a bit is a single bit of binary information. 1-bit music refers to the amplitude. So you've got stuff like 8-bit or 16-bit music, which doesn't really refer to anything. Like 8-bit music doesn't mean anything. It's kind of the platforms, or the architectures of the processors that these musics tended to be played by. But you could have a NES doing anything. Like you could have a NES controlling a synthesizer, and then it would be, I don't know, 64-bit music or something.
So it doesn't relate to what can happen simultaneously, because it's almost like what it sounds like to me, a complete lay person, like with this. But it's got nothing to do with that. Like it's polyphony.
I think that is a result of the limitations. So because you've only got 2 states to amplitude, so a binary digit controlling the amplitude can either have one state or another state. There is no continuous amplitudinal changes. So if you think, if I had 8 bits, for instance, I've got 255 different possible states I can represent for the amplitude. And so I can have continuous changes over time. Whereas with 1-bit music or 1-bit audio, I've only got 2 states I can use, meaning that I can only make pulse waves or square waves.
Okay. Should we hear some of this?
You want to hear some 1-bit music?
Yeah, I want us to hear how different it is to what we heard before.
So here's the thing. I only have 1-bit music that does a bunch of fancy tricks that I was going to explain later on.
Oh, okay. Let's leave it then.
Yeah, because it would imply that it's just monophonic. Because if I have a square wave and I've only got 2 different states I can address it, if I add another square wave, you know what happens when you add 2 sine waves together?
No.
You get phase addition or phase subtraction. So I can't have 2 sine waves within the same amplitude.
What, of any pitch?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, it happens with, phase cancellation.
Yes.
It's where you've got the trough of the waveform next to the peak of the waveform.
Okay. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
That's one of those things I never really understood. There's one of those terms I remember hearing at college and whatever. People talk about that, how noise can cancel each other out. Yeah. I never understood how. I think I have an idea, but
Okay.
Is it it's because we always see sound waves as going up and down,
Yeah.
right? But isn't it that they actually pull in and out?
They do, but I think it's easier to understand the concept if you imagine them as wobbling up and down, because it does translate.
Okay.
I mean, you've got some interesting things with amplitude being the power of the waveform in a longitudinal wave, whereas you'd expect frequency, I guess, being the power of the wave. That's not related. But if you imagine a waveform as oscillating around 0 to 1 to -1, so if I've got a string on a guitar, 0 is its stationary point.
Okay.
1 is its movement to one side of the fretboard. It's called a fretboard, right?
Yes.
Because you are a guitarist. So
Yeah,
know.
I should know. Yes, it is. Yeah.
And then you've got -1 as the other direction.
Yeah.
Across the fretboard.
I think they all move in little circles, essentially.
Do they?
I think so. I could be wrong about that.
But
I think that's right. But either way, the point's the same.
Yeah,
because it's not just doing this.
It's wobbling around.
Yeah.
But
when I say doing this, I'm just moving my finger left to right.
I mean...
I'm pretty sure it's like a skipping rope, I think.
Okay, so it goes. There's another axis.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not helpful,
isn't it?
No.
Okay.
Just imagine it's in 2 dimensions.
Can we imagine it in 4?
What a tesseract string.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, not helpful. I mean, technically it's 3 because you've got time as well.
I guess technically those do exist because there's a band called Tesseract and they have strings.
It's not satisfying though, is it?
No.
No.
No offense to them.
I mean, music in 4 dimensions would be interesting if you don't take like the physics nonsense of like time.
Nonsense.
Yeah, like because time is like the 4th dimension in physics.
Yeah.
I mean the cool 4th dimension.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, not helpful. So where were we going with this? Oh yeah, phase cancellation.
Yes. Okay, you're going to explain how that works.
So you can imagine tracing that vibration across a piece of graph paper.
Okay.
So we've got 0 as the center and then 1 and -1. So my sine wave will go from 1 through 0 to -1. Now, if I have 2 sine waves and I want to add them together, I can't just like superimpose them over the top of one another. They're going to combine, which is why when you see the oscilloscope view of any music recording, it looks all messy.
You have a really complex sound wave.
Yeah, because
there's all these things going on at once.
Yeah, they've all been added together.
Yeah.
So if I have the peak of a sine wave meeting up with another peak of the sine wave, then they both get added together and they get twice as loud.
Okay.
So imagine 1 + 1 is equal to 2.
Yeah.
It gets twice as loud. If I have the trough of the sine wave, so the -1 meeting the -1, it's -1, -1. I can never remember if my mind... Anyway, I know it goes to -2, right? Okay. And if you...
So what would that sound like?
That will just sound louder. So if I have 2 sine... I mean, I can do it here. Let's see if... I don't know how this is going to come out. But if I go... And if I add a sine wave... Let's add this one here. And I clone the sound and I add another one in. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Gets twice as loud. If I take it away...
Well, what doesn't help whilst we're trying to listen to this whiny sound is there's a police siren going on outside.
To be fair, actually, I wonder if I should not talk over the recording of the...
Yeah.
So,
let's try that again.
Okay. So, first I'm going to present a sine wave. And now I'm going to add another sine wave over the top of it. And it's slightly louder.
Who knew that the more sound happening, the more loud?
Okay, now I'm going to try something.
See, this is the sort of stuff you don't learn from other podcasts.
No. This is the real content you've come for.
I'm wondering if this is a bit heavy for like a first episode. I swear it's going to get easier to listen to.
To be fair, you didn't know what phase additional cancellation was, so, I mean, you joke.
Are you talking to me or just anyone listening? You didn't know.
No, we all know.
Okay.
This is for your benefit.
Oh, everyone in the audience, who's actually probably no one, knows. Actually, to be fair, it's just you. No one's listening. We can say what we want.
Okay, right. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to offset the phase. But this is completely ad hoc. I've not done this before, so this could just fail.
Okay.
But I know the concept's true. So
Okay.
I'm going to adjust. So we've got 2 sine waves in phase with each other, and then I'm going to adjust the offset of that, and hopefully they're going to reach a point where they cancel each other out.
There we go.
Okay, here we go. And the reason why that didn't work is because apparently it doesn't allow me to do the full phase offset, unfortunately.
So I really don't know what I've learned.
No,
Okay, in theory, these
What
two
should have
sound
happened?
waves can cancel each other out.
Yeah, because-
But is this trying to circumvent that or something?
No,
Is there
no, I'm just trying to show you how that happens.
I mean, I know you're trying, but is there some reason you can't do it on whatever software you're using?
Yeah, because the phase offset isn't allowing me to go the whole 1 or 90 degrees, 180 degrees. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to offset the so if I have a peak and a trough, as I move those, you know I said if you've got 1 and 1 and -1 and -1, they get louder.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got 1 and -1, that equates to 0.
Yeah.
You get no sound at all.
Yeah.
So if you have a sine wave completely offset from each other, so the peak is in line with the trough, the sine wave will completely cancel itself out.
Okay. In real life, how does this work out? Like if I was listening to someone playing a sine wave in one corner of the room,
Yeah.
and someone's playing something in another corner, how would this work exactly? Is it something that happens in an actual performance environment?
It can do, yeah. And it's usually more subtle than complete noise cancellation. And actually, this is how your noise cancellation software works.
Okay.
It finds a period of noise, and then it tries to find, because noise is often periodic. It's a humming of different things. It finds that period of noise, and then it goes, okay, that sounds like this. I'm going to find every instance where it looks like this, and then flip it upside down so the troughs correspond with the peaks, and it's just gone from the signal. You do hear it in real life where sometimes if your speakers aren't set up properly, they will cancel each other out. So they'll and you can actually use it to get them to converge at certain points. So there was this thing, and I don't know if it was real or proposed. I think the concept, I mean, it definitely works, but they were using it to speech jam politicians. So speech jamming is where you play a recording of someone, what they're saying, back a fraction of a second later, and they just can't think over the sound of themselves.
I've seen this happening on TV.
Yeah.
They give people headphones and they can hear they can hear their own voice. And
then you just freeze up, you can't talk. But you can position speakers such that you are pulling two waveforms into phase addition at a certain point in 3D space.
Okay.
So you're able just to broadcast sound.
So there's a spot where those sound waves converge, and in that point, it'll be quiet.
Yeah.
Okay. So I could stand near one speaker, I'll hear it. Stand in the other one, I'll hear it. Stand in between them, it might.
Yeah, or the other way around.
Okay.
Where you can't hear them, but you can hear it at a certain point.
Okay. And this way, how did this connect to what we were talking about?
I can't remember.
We went you can't have multiple sine waves.
Yeah. Okay. So phase addition. So if I have two sine waves, then so let's stay with this 1 and -1 thing. So if I have a signal which is 1, and then I add another signal, it's 2. But remember, we've only got one bit. So let's say we're only replicating sounds from 0 to 1, then anything that goes beyond 1 doesn't exist. It just gets clipped off. It becomes a square wave. So everything is a square wave. So you can't have polyphony in the traditional sense. You can't keep adding square waves together. You just end up with just a monophonic square wave.
So this is why we never heard Speminalium in Super Mario.
Mario wasn't, come on.
Oh.
Nintendo Entertainment System, it was 8-bit.
Oh, I forgot what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, 1-bit. What's a 1-bit system?
So the ZX Spectrum.
Let's try this joke again. So this is why we didn't hear Speminalium on the ZX Spectrum.
That's much more accurate and much more funny.
Yeah.
Because of it. Yeah. No.
First one wasn't funny. Second one wasn't funny either, but
accurate.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not even accurate because they wouldn't have put it in the game anyway.
I don't know. They did put classical music in, and again, like this was part of my PhD. Like the reason you hear classical music often in like monophonic systems is because you don't have to do any like harmonic work to make it sound like a tune. I know that this is.
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
Well, if you think, if I have something like "Happy Birthday," then you already know the chords that go underneath that by just cultural association.
Oh, okay.
But if I have my own original composition and I've only got a monophonic tune, then
I see what you mean.
Yeah, you have to do way more work to get someone to understand what's going on.
Also, you get sort of classical music, which is like one instrument line, but they've written in a way that the harmony is implied and kind of obvious.
Yeah.
Like the cello suites, Bach's cello suites.
Oh yeah.
Like there'd be a good example. I know there's going to be times where there's like double stopping, there's some overlap, but generally you could quite easily replicate it in single monophonic music.
Yeah, so actually,
And the chords, you can sort of hear what they are because he's composed them in a way that you can hear what the chord progression is.
yeah, there's loads of techniques for doing that. And actually, we've arrived on the compositional strategies if you just have a pulse wave, a monophonic pulse wave, or square wave. There is a difference, and we'll get onto the difference because the difference is important for the different tricks.
Like, okay, can we summarize what we've actually said so far?
Okay.
So, what's your PhD?
So my PhD is in 1-bit music. It's technically an embedded composition. So it was 1-bit music and then finding solutions for cramming music into sizes less than a kilobyte.
Okay, so it's like writing interesting music in the most minimal amount of information.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And you specifically look at interesting compositional devices.
Yes.
To navigate around the limitations that nature has provided.
Yeah, but with 1-bit music as my primary sonified product.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to summarize thus far?
We've covered harmonics, phase addition, subtraction, a bit of chiptune, some compositional strategies for monophonic voices.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Did you want to conclude here?
We could wrap up and then start off again with part 2 in a minute.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that. Hopefully you'll stick around for part 2. If you've understood or been interested in any of this.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Well,
whatever it is you're talking about.
I mean, I liked it enough to spend 4 years doing it, so...
Yeah. Well, we've got some really interesting things coming up, don't we?
Oh, yeah. Stuff that works this time.
Yeah, you got to stick around to the end. Because... Wow. You do have some really weird things to show us, don't you?
Yeah, but unfortunately...
I know it's tantalising. Play us a sound clip. We're not going to explain what's going on, right? Until next
have
time.
To tune in, yeah, sure.
Until the next episode.
Let's do this one.
I got no idea what that is. What's going on?
You'll find out.
Yeah, see? There's no way anyone who heard that doesn't want to know what just happened to
I
them.
feel like you're begging now.
Yeah, this is sad. It's kind of like THX thing. Is that THX?
Yeah, you mean the...
Yeah, the audience is listening.
Yeah, there's lots of pitch bends, isn't it?
I'm just thinking, wait, is that the drugs? No, it is THX. Isn't it? Okay, I got that right.
Cool. Well, do you want to sign off?
Bye.